So now we're starting to have a look at the equipment that we're rigging the silks to. So here we've got broadly two different categories of equipment. The equipment which is specifically designed for silks, and the equipment which is designed for other uses, but we now use it for silks. So Catherine, take us through the different ones, maybe the silk bells first.
Yep. So these are known as silk bells, they're known as fabric hooks, they're known as fabric bells. So basically, these have been designed not to put as much tension on the silks because they've got a larger surface for the knot to be tied over.
Yep.
This one here is a unicycle one, and you get different unicycle ones. You get larger ones and smaller ones depending on the type of silk. And this is the new one from Prodigy that they've just brought out, which is, as you can see, substantially smaller. We have the figure 8 or rescue 8, which was initially used for rescue and for climbing. It has some ears on it, but you can get it without ears as well. So that's something important we'll discuss when we're actually rigging the silks to it. These are important. And we have a swivel, which come in all different configurations. So this one, you'd have to attach an attachment, a carabiner or whatever to each end. But you get some that have got shackles at one end, shackles at two ends, just depending on the height you're using.
Yep.
So basically these give the minimum braking strength on them because they've been borrowed from areas like climbing and rescue, that's how it's given.
So looking at the figures that are on these, for example, this Rescue 8 has a minimum braking strain of 40 kilonewtons, which is 4 tons.
That's right.
So we're unlikely to be braking that anytime soon. And this one has 30 kilonewtons, which is around about 3 tons.
Absolutely.
So when we look at these, what would be, how are they different in how we're marking them up?
So this one would be giving in the working load limit. Okay. It's been specifically designed for silks, and that's what it's given as. So I think this one's 200 kilos for
the Prodigy one.
And this one is given actually in decanewtons, so it's 600, so that would be 600 kilograms.
So we often see that on French-related websites where they're using decanewtons, and it's easier to convert between decanewtons and kilograms because it's 1 to 1.
It's direct.
Rather than having to
something to do our sums in our
divide
head.
or multiply by 100. Yes, indeed. Good stuff. So could you take one of these as an example and show us what sort of knots we're actually going to tie on each of them?
It's easier to see the knots by doing it in rope first. Because once you start having all that fabric in the way, it's quite hard to actually see what's going on. So I'll actually show you something like this fabric bell here or fabric hook. When it comes through, when you actually get it, you'll get instructions with it and type of knots to tie. And one of the ways they tell you to do it is a prusik knot, and the other way is just a clove hitch.
Yep.
So for the prusik, it's actually easier because I know that your normal prusik, you would feed the tails through, but it's actually slightly easier in these. There's a little trick that you have. So you would be, if you can see this here, so you create your loop. Sorry, bring your loop down. Oops. Open these out here. Bring your loop down through the tails, bring it back up and through again. Now at this point, normally you would go back down and through and feed it through, but you actually take it over the top, fold it over, et voila. So you've only had to actually work with the part that you're tying the knot with. You're not having to thread the whole tail through the whole way.
Yeah, it makes it easier to tie.
It is slightly different from your normal prusik in as much as your working ends, yes, are on the outside, but your working ends are coming from the middle, but they come to the middle by crossing over the other ones here, and the one that's actually constricting the knot is still your outside thread, so that's fine. So it's slightly different in that you've got a crossing of the knot at that point, which you wouldn't usually have in a prusik knot.
So if we were to look up what a prusik knot looks like, if we're going to get that as a reference from the internet, then obviously that would look a little different to this.
It does look a little different.
But we're only concerned about this one here for using it.
So it's slightly different, but it just means that, as I say, instead of threading, if you've got, say, a 20 metre height, you're not wanting to be threading sort of 10 metres of length through this the whole time.
No,
so yeah, that's
So do we want to try the same thing with the silk, so we can see what it looks like if we're doing that with that one?
If you were to have to work with this and thread all of this fabric through to do a traditional prusik, you would be at it forever. So let's find a midpoint. Yeah, we'll take this as the middle. It's been twisted up because it's much easier to see what we're doing. So as I say, you would bring the loop that you want to work in through the top part of it, take it back down between your two tails here, take it back up and through again. Now at this point, you don't have to go down and through here again. You just take your fabric, open it up, pull it over the top, make sure you've got enough. And this is why we did it with the rope first, because if you were to try to do this and demonstrate it with silk, you would see it's no easy feat.
Definitely not a lot clearer.
That's your prusik on a silk, and just make sure it's nice and tidy.
Very good.
And it's quite a safe knot. Now, you can actually work on one strand of this and it's not going to slip, and on one strand it's not going to slip. And that's important because quite often in silks you're not just working on both strands together.
You're often hanging from a single strand.
You're often hanging from a single one or doing the splits or whatever on it, and you don't want this to ride up over here.
Very good.
So that's the prusik knot. The other knot that we would use on silks would be the clove hitch.
Could you show us the clove hitch on the Prodigy?
So on this Prodigy here, this one you have to feed the silks the whole way through. And that's the thing that puts a lot of people off. But actually, it's the better one to use on this silk, this particular one, because it is a smaller bell. So to do the prusik on this, you've got quite a lot of bunching of fabric that can be outside of it, depending on the thickness of your fabric. So for a clove hitch, you would go through, you take the full length that you want, then you cross over, pull it through again, you bring your fabric up. Now, the manufacturer's instructions tell you to...
I think we're going to need to show that part to the camera.
Yeah, the manufacturer's instructions say that you take it under this loop and take it over the top, which means both of your working ends are coming from above. The good thing about this one is that it gives you separate fabrics. However, as I've said before, if you're not working on both fabrics on this, then you can get slippage from side to side if you take it above. So when I do this, I'll take this out and I'll show you again. Having gone up and over, cross it over, and I take it up, but I don't take it back through this part here, and that leaves both of your working ends from below. You don't get the same slippage this way.
Very good.
On a larger bell, it wouldn't work on this one because you've not got the distance for it. But on a larger bell, I would do a double clove hitch because it just causes a bit of compression and actually makes it not safer. And you do get a lot less slippage if you're performing tricks where you're sort of in one and pulling. So a double clove hitch, we take it up and through the whole way, up and through again. This is what I personally use with my silks because I like my silks to be separated. You then cross that over, take your fabric up through the diagonal, back down, back up through the diagonal, making sure that your working ends are the inner strands. And that's a double clove hitch. And the reason that this works, so the reason that this actually gives you a safer, to my mind, a safer knot, if you hold that there, is that when you're putting tension here, because this is the inner strands, what's happening is it's putting tension in the outer strands, and that inward force, so that inward force is actually making this knot more secure.
Gotcha. Because
it's always compressing inwards on itself. So I like the double clove hitch if I'm putting my silks on my larger fabric bell. On this smaller one, there's not enough room, so you'd have to stick with the single clove hitch.
That's good.
There we go. But it is a bit of a palaver because you've got to feed all that material through, so it depends on what height you're working with.
Show us this one with the silk, please.
Okay, so as I said before with your rope, the problem with this is you've got a lot of material to pull through. So your clove hitch, you're going to take your fabric up and over. You would pull it right the way through to the midpoint of your fabric, which I probably won't do today. Then as we did with the rope, you're going to cross this fabric over the first one and take it through again. Pull the whole fabric through. And I'm going to do it my way. So bring the fabric to the front, take it up through the area that you've crossed over. Tidy it up. And could you hold it up for me, Mark? And there you are. So you've got both of your ends that are feeding downwards. And there you go. And they're nicely separated. And I think that's a nicer knot for this one than the prusik.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel
fits nicely.
It fits the bell better, doesn't it? The fabric hook better.
Yeah.
So that's the clove hitch on the Prodigy bell.
Excellent. Let's have a look at the figure of 8, and keen to see what that looks like, and with the knots that we're going to be applying to that. So I'll leave that one with you.
I'm
just going to move this one out of view.
Take that out of the way, yes, in the way. So the normal knot that everyone uses for a figure of 8 is you take the centre point of your fabric, feed that through, you come back down, so your tails are here. I'll open this out for you. You come down, you go through the tails, you come back up through the original hole before you take it over the top. And this is sort of really a friction knot that's holding it in position. That's what's stopping the slippage, is the friction of this going through.
Same as
and
the
it's
clove
locked
hitch.
up here, yeah. So it's this going back through again, it actually gives you the friction. And we can tie that for you if you want.
Sounds like a good idea.
With your silk hook, we've twisted our fabric so it's easier to see what we're doing here. Our tails are sitting there apart. We're going to bring this through the loop in the midpoint of the silk. We're going to take it back down between the tails, back up through the original hole that we went through in first instance, and up and over the top. Tighten everything. Now, as I said earlier about this particular piece of equipment, if you're using one that has these ears on it, then make sure that the fabric isn't pulling over the ears, either this part or this part here, because that can actually cause damage to the fabric.
Okay.
It can cause holes.
Yeah.
But that's the normal knot that's used for that, and it's really good because it gives you good separation at the top.
Very good.
It's not really necessary, but some people have a preference for that.
Excellent.
Yep.